Before dawn, you're already scrubbing trenchers with icy water. By mid-morning, you're hauling firewood, dodging insults, and silently praying the Lord's children don't spill anything. Again, no pay, no privacy, no rest, just endless chores, aching feet, and a world that never lets you sit down. One day in a medieval manner. And you'd wonder how anyone did this for a lifetime. If you're already feeling sore just thinking about it, you're in the right place. Subscribe and hit the bell icon for more sleepy, slightly miserable tales from the dusty corners of history. And let us know, how long would you have lasted as a servant in the 1300s? You wake in the pitch-black darkness of the castle's cellar, your body aching from sleeping on a straw-filled sack that barely cushions you from the cold stone floor. The air is thick with the smell of unwashed bodies, damp stone, and the lingering odors from the kitchen above. 6 other scullery maids share this cramped space with you, their breathing creating small clouds in the frigid air. It's October in the year 1347, and you've been working at Warwick Castle for 3 months now. Though it feels like 3 years, the first bell hasn't even rung when you force yourself upright, your joints protesting every movement. At 14 years old, you feel ancient already. Your hands, once soft from your family's small farm, are now cracked and bleeding from constant exposure to lye soap and scalding water. The calluses that have formed provide little protection against the daily assault of scrubbing, scouring, and endless washing that defines your existence. You stumble in the darkness toward the bucket of water in the corner, the same bucket you and your fellow maids use for drinking, washing your faces, and occasionally rinsing your one set of clothes when they become too filthy to bear. The water is covered with a thin layer of ice that you break with your knuckles, the sharp cold making you gasp. This is your morning luxury, a handful of freezing water splashed on your face to shock yourself into wakefulness. The other maids begin stirring as you feel around for your shoes, leather strips, bound with rope that offer minimal protection against the wet. Stone floors you'll traverse thousands of times throughout the day. Margaret, who's been here for 2 years and at 16, considers herself ancient by servant standards, whispers instructions in the darkness. Her voice carries the weariness of someone who has long since abandoned any hope of improvement in her circumstances. "Remember, Alice," she says, using the name the cook assigned you regardless of your actual name, Lady Eleanor's chambers, first thing after the fires. She's been complaining about water spots on her silver basin. If there's so much as a fingerprint visible, cook will have you beaten again. The memory of yesterday's punishment, 3 sharp strikes across your shoulders with a wooden ladle, makes you wince involuntarily. The castle above you begins to stir with the faint sounds of the higher ranking servants starting their day. You can hear the muffled footsteps of the chamberlain preparing his lordship's chamber, the distant clatter of the grooms heading to the stables, and the first sounds from the kitchen, where the baker has already been working for 2 hours to ensure fresh bread for the Lord's breakfast. Your stomach clenches with hunger, a constant companion that you've learned to ignore as much as possible. Yesterday's meals consisted of a bowl of thin porridge made from barley and water, seasoned with nothing but hunger, and an evening portion of bread so coarse it cut your gums as you chewed. The brown bread given to servants bears little resemblance to the white loaves served at the Lord's table, consisting mainly of ground oats, barley, and whatever grain sweepings could be gathered from the floor. As you make your way through the THR/horror, as you make your way through the THF, mace/texture that glides on smoothly and leaves a rich, long-last K's, long-lasting color. May it seem like May/May/May-lies, May/May, and whatever Casely/Maylas, may it/Maylas lies, May////Ikela, it will be a quite sigh, we//lad, by with that, but it's I can debel you with those. It's a can it's it at all big it could kakas it's a lace greek kiss I salada sit to blade the device it's like I did it's narrow stone corridors toward the kitchen. Your bare feet quickly become numb from the cold. The corridors are unheated, and winter drafts find every crack and crevice in the ancient stones. The air carries the mixed scents of wood smoke, cooking, meat from the Lord's kitchens, and the less pleasant aromas of unwashed bodies and waste from the castle's primitive sanitation systems. The kitchen, when you finally reach it, provides blessed warmth from the massive fireplaces that burn constantly to serve the household's needs. But with warmth comes the overwhelming assault of heat, smoke, and steam that will define your working environment for the next 16 hours. The head cook, a massive woman whose permanent scowl seems carved into her face, barely glances at you as you take your position at the scullery sinks. Your first task is lighting the fires under the grate, cauldrons used for heating wash water. This involves gathering kindling from the woodpile, splinters that invariably find their way under your fingernails, and coaxing flames from the banked coals. The smoke stings your eyes and leaves you coughing, but there's no time to recover. Already, serving dishes from last night's feast await your attention, crusted with congealed fats and food scraps that have hardened to the consistency of stone. The lye soap you'll use to cut through the grease is made from wood, ash, and animal fat, creating a caustic mixture that burns your skin with each exposure. Your hands, after 3 months of this treatment, are permanently red and raw, with cracks that never fully heal before being reopened by the next day's assault. The soap burns especially painfully in the cuts and scrapes that cover your fingers, from handling broken pottery and sharp kitchen implements. But physical pain is only part of your burden. The mental exhaustion of knowing that each cleaned pot will immediately be replaced by 3 dirty ones, that every surface you scrub will be soiled again before you finish the adjacent one, creates a crushing sense of futility that weighs as heavily as the physical labor itself. What makes this endless cycle truly unbearable isn't just the work, it's the complete absence of hope for anything better. You've heard whispered stories of servants who caught the attention of kind nobles, who were promoted to positions of relative comfort. But these tales seem as fantastical as stories of dragons and unicorns. The reality facing you is decades of this same routine, your body growing more broken with each passing year, until you're too old and infirm to continue and are cast out with nothing. By the time the castle's morning bells ring, you've already been working for 2 hours, and your first major challenge of the day presents itself: the great feast dishes from the previous evening. The lord of the castle had entertained visiting knights, which means 47 separate serving vessels await your attention, each one representing a unique form of medieval culinary archaeology that you must excavate with nothing but cold water, harsh soap, and increasingly raw fingers. The silver platters that held the roasted swans and peacocks are the worst. The rich fats have congealed into a white, waxy coating that resists all attempts at cleaning except the most aggressive scrubbing. You must first scrape away the solid fat with a dull knife, trying not to scratch the silver surface any visible. Marks will result in punishment from the steward, who inspects your work with the thoroughness of a military commander examining his troops. The pewter cups present their own challenges. Red wine has stained them a deep purple that requires multiple scrubbings with increasingly potent mixtures of soap and sand. Your knuckles split open anew from scraping against the rough surfaces, leaving small trails of blood that you must quickly wash away before anyone notices. The pain has become so constant that you barely register it anymore, except when salt from the cleaning solutions finds its way into fresh cuts as you work. The kitchen around you explodes into the controlled chaos of preparing the day's meals. The head cook shouts orders in a voice that carries clearly over the clatter of pots and the crackling of fires. Scullery boys, your male counterparts who are somehow considered superior. Despite doing essentially the same work, rush past carrying buckets of water from the well, occasionally splashing you with cold, dirty water that soaks through your thin woolen dress. The dress itself has become a catalog of your daily struggles. Originally brown wool, it's now stained permanently with grease, soup, wine, and substances you prefer not to identify. You own only this one dress, washing it perhaps once every few weeks, when the smell becomes so overwhelming that even your fellow servants complain. When you do wash it, you must work naked in the cold cellar until it dries, adding another layer of misery to your existence. Around midday, when your arms feel as though they might fall off from the constant scrubbing motion, you're summoned for one of your most dreaded tasks: cleaning Lady Eleanor's chamber pot. The walk from the kitchen to the Lord's private quarters takes you through the castle's main hall, where you must navigate around the activities of your social betters while carrying a vessel full of human waste. The chamber pot itself is made of fine glazed pottery, decorated with painted flowers, a piece of artistry that you must clean while trying not to think about its contents. The irony isn't lost on you that this vessel, used for the most basic human function, is more beautiful and valuable than anything you will ever own. You scrub it with the same meticulous care you apply to the silver platters, knowing that any oversight will result in punishment. Lady Eleanor's chambers represent a world so far removed from your experience that you might as well be visiting another realm entirely. Tapestries depicting hunting scenes cover the walls, their rich colors and intricate details, creating an environment of luxury that stands in stark contrast to your own bare stone sleeping chamber. The bed, with its carved posts and silk curtains, could house your entire family comfortably. But you're not here to admire the luxury, you're here to work. After disposing of the chamber pot's contents in the castle's waste chute, you must sweep the floors, replace the rushes that cover them, and beat the dust from the tapestries. The rushes, made from dried reeds and scattered with sweet-smelling herbs, must be completely replaced weekly, requiring you to gather the old rushes, carry them to the waste area, and lay fresh ones in precise patterns. The physical demands of the work are compounded by the constant vigilance required to avoid mistakes. Every task is performed under the potential scrutiny of higher-ranking servants who seem to take pleasure in finding faults. The chamberlain, responsible for the lord's personal comfort, inspects your work with white gloves, running his fingers along surfaces to detect any trace of dust or grime. A single speck results in having to redo the entire room while receiving a lecture about the disgrace you bring to the household. During the afternoon hours, as exhaustion begins to set in, your movements become increasingly clumsy. This is when accidents happen: when you drop a pewter cup, chipping its edge, or when you splash dirty water on a clean surface. Each mistake is noted, recorded, and added to the growing list of infractions that justify reduced food rations or physical punishment. The psychological toll of constant criticism and the knowledge that you can never fully satisfy your superiors creates a state of perpetual anxiety. You find yourself checking and rechecking completed tasks, second-guessing every decision, and developing a nervous tremor in your hands that makes the work even more difficult. As afternoon fades toward evening, the pace of work doesn't slow, it intensifies. The evening feast requires preparation, which means every pot, pan, and utensil you've spent the day cleaning will soon be dirty again. The knowledge that your day's work will be undone within hours would be demoralizing if you had any energy left for such emotions, but perhaps the most crushing realization comes as you watch the kitchen staff prepare the evening meal. The amount of food that will be discarded as scraps exceeds what you'll eat in a week. Whole joints of meat, barely touched, will be thrown to the dogs while you survive on watery porridge and stale bread. The casual waste of resources that could transform your existence demonstrates more clearly than words ever could just how little your welfare matters to those you serve, As the last light fades from the narrow windows high above the kitchen, your day is far from over. The evening feast has concluded, and with it comes the most dreaded part of your daily existence, the great cleaning. 43 plates, 27 cups, 15 serving platters, and countless utensils now await your attention, each one bearing the congealed remnants of foods whose names you don't even know. The grease from roasted meats has hardened into white, waxy deposits that resist all attempts at removal except for the most aggressive scrubbing with water so hot it raises blisters on your already damaged hands. The wine stains have set into the pewter cups like permanent dye, requiring you to scrub with a mixture of sand and soap that leaves your palms raw and bleeding. By this time, you've been working for nearly 18 hours with only brief moments of rest to consume your meager meals. Your legs shake with exhaustion, and you must brace yourself against the stone-washing sinks to remain upright. The other scullery maids work beside you in grim silence, too tired for conversation, each locked in her own private struggle against fatigue and despair. The kitchen fires burn lower now, providing less heat and light for your work. Shadows dance on the walls as you scrub by flickering candlelight, the inadequate illumination forcing you to hold each piece close to your face to ensure it's truly clean. The smoke from the dying fires mingles with steam from your wash water, creating a hazy atmosphere that burns your eyes and makes breathing difficult around midnight. When the last dish is finally clean and stored away, you might think your day is complete. But winter nights bring their own special torments. The fires that heated the kitchen during the day are now banked low to conserve fuel, and the temperature in the stone chambers drops rapidly. Your wet dress, soaked through from hours of dishwashing, begins to freeze against your skin as you make your way back to the cellar sleeping quarters. The sleeping chamber itself offers little refuge from the cold. No fire burns here. Fuel is too precious to waste on servant comfort. You lie down on your straw pallet, fully clothed in your damp dress, and pull a thin woolen blanket over yourself. The blanket, shared with Margaret on alternating nights, is infested with fleas that bite constantly, adding to your misery. But sleep doesn't come easily, even when exhaustion should make it inevitable. Your hands, damaged from the day's work with lye soap and scalding water, throb with pain that prevents rest. The cuts and scrapes burn constantly, and any movement sends fresh waves of discomfort through your overworked muscles. You lie in the darkness, listening to the sounds of rats scurrying through the walls and the labored breathing of your fellow servants. The psychological weight of tomorrow presses down on you like a physical burden. You know that when the morning bells ring, you'll face exactly the same routine, the same brutal scrubbing, the same impossible standards, the same casual cruelty from your superiors. There's no variation, no hope of improvement. Nothing to break the monotonous cycle of suffering that defines your existence. Sometimes, in the darkest hours before dawn, you allow yourself to remember your life before the castle. You recall the small farm where your family lived, the feeling of sun on your face as you worked in the garden, the simple pleasure of eating an apple picked fresh from the tree. These memories seem like dreams now, so distant from your current reality that they might have happened to someone else entirely. The contrast between your memories and your present situation is so stark that it sometimes triggers fits of weeping that you must muffle in your straw pillow to avoid disturbing the other girls. These moments of grief are dangerous. If discovered, they would be interpreted as ingratitude and punished accordingly. Servants are expected to be grateful for their positions, regardless of how miserable those positions might be. Physical exhaustion isn't the only toll this life takes on you. The constant stress of trying to meet impossible standards while receiving only criticism and punishment has begun to affect your mind. You find yourself forgetting simple things, becoming confused by routine tasks you've performed hundreds of times. Your personality, once cheerful and optimistic, has been ground down to a dull acceptance of suffering as the natural state of existence. The most disturbing realization comes when you try to imagine your future. You can't. A life of a scullery maid offers no progression, no opportunities for advancement, no hope of marriage or family. You'll continue this exact routine until your body gives out completely. Probably sometime in your 20s if you're unlucky enough to live that long. When you can no longer work, you'll be cast out of the castle with nothing, left to die in whatever manner fate provides, as you finally drift towards sleep in the pre-dawn hours. Your last conscious thought is the same question that haunts every servant in medieval Europe. How can human beings treat other human beings with such casual cruelty? But questions like these have no answers. In a world where your value as a person is measured solely by your capacity for manual labor, and where the comfortable lives of your betters depend entirely on your willingness to endure unendurable conditions, the darkness offers no comfort, only temporary unconsciousness before the cycle begins anew. Tomorrow will bring the same dishes, the same pain, the same hopelessness, an endless repetition that stretches ahead of you like a path leading nowhere, but deeper into misery. The chapel bell strikes 4 times in the darkness above you, each toll echoing through the stone corridors like a death knell for sleep. You've been a chambermaid at Nottingham Castle for 8 months now, and your body has never adjusted to these pre-dawn risings. Your sleeping quarters, a cramped attic space you share with 5 other chambermaids, is so cold that your breath creates small clouds in the frigid air. You roll off your straw mattress, which has compressed over the months into little more than a lumpy cloth barrier between your body and the wooden floor. The straw inside has broken down into dust and fragments that work their way through the rough fabric, creating an itchy, uncomfortable surface that leaves you covered in small scratches and welts. But this mattress represents luxury compared to your previous position as a scullery maid. At least now you sleep above ground level. The other maids stir reluctantly in the darkness. Sarah, who's been here for 3 years and serves as an unofficial leader, whispers the morning ritual of assignments. Emma takes Lady Margaret's chamber. Mary handles the guest quarters, and Alice, ... She pauses, and you feel your stomach clench with dread. You've got Lord Edmund's private chambers again. Lord Edmund's quarters represent both the pinnacle of your responsibilities and your greatest source of terror. The Lord's personal chambers require meticulous attention to detail that can make or break your day and potentially your continued employment. Every surface must be perfectly clean, every item precisely positioned, every aspect of the room prepared to exacting standards that seem to change daily based on his lordship's moods. You feel around in the darkness for your work. Dress, the same brown woolen garment you've worn every day for 8 months. The dress originally belonged to another chambermaid who died during the summer fever outbreak, and it fits poorly, hanging loose in some places and tight in others. The fabric has absorbed so many odors from your work: lye soap, wood smoke, human waste, and countless unidentifiable substances that it maintains a permanent smell that no amount of washing can eliminate. Your work shoes are strips of leather bound with rope, offering minimal protection against the cold stone floors you'll traverse thousands of times throughout the day. The soles have worn through in several places, allowing moisture and cold to seep through to your bare feet. You've stuffed the holes with rags, but they provide little insulation and create uncomfortable lumps that make walking painful. The first task of your day requires gathering your cleaning supplies from the storage chamber below. This involves navigating the castle's narrow, unheated corridors in complete darkness, feeling your way along stone walls that weep with moisture, and navigating stairs that are slippery with condensation. The storage chamber itself is a cramped space filled with the tools of your trade: straw brooms worn down to stubby remnants, buckets with cracked bottoms that leak steadily and rags so threadbare they fall apart when wrung out. The bucket you'll use for carrying wash water weighs nearly as much when empty as you do when starving, which is most of the time. When filled with water, it becomes a back-breaking burden that you must carry up and down stone stairs dozens of times throughout the day. The rope handle cuts into your palms, leaving permanent grooves in your flesh that never fully heal before being reopened by the next day's work. Your cleaning arsenal consists of lye, soap made from wood, ash, and animal fat, creating a caustic mixture that burns your skin with each use. Sand for scouring stubborn stains, vinegar for cleaning glass and metal surfaces, and various herbs like lavender and rosemary to freshen rooms and mask odors. The herbs represent the only pleasant aspect of your work environment, providing brief moments of aromatic relief from the overwhelming smells of waste, unwashed bodies, and decay that permeate the castle. The walk from the storage chamber to Lord Edmund's quarters takes you through the castle's main corridors, where you must navigate around the activities of higher-ranking servants while carrying your heavy bucket of supplies. The established hierarchy means you must step aside for anyone of superior rank, which includes virtually everyone in the castle. Knights, squires, stewards, cooks, and even stable boys all outrank you in the complex social structure that governs castle life. Lord Edmund's chambers occupy the finest section of the castle, with thick tapestries covering the stone walls, multiple fireplaces to provide warmth, and glass windows that allow actual sunlight to enter during the day. The contrast between these luxurious quarters and your own bare sleeping space is so stark that it might as well represent two different worlds entirely. But luxury for the Lord means exponentially more work for you. The tapestries must be beaten regularly to remove dust and insects. The multiple fireplaces require constant attention, cleaning out ashes, laying fresh wood, ensuring proper ventilation to prevent smoke from backing up into the room. The glass windows, a marvel of medieval technology that few castles possess, must be cleaned with vinegar and soft cloths to maintain their transparency. The bedroom itself contains furnishings that represent more wealth than your family has seen in generations. The massive four-poster bed is carved from oak and hung with silk curtains that cost more than most peasants earn in a lifetime. The mattress is stuffed with down rather than straw, covered with linen sheets that must be changed regularly and washed with painstaking care to maintain their pristine white color. Your first task is preparing the morning fire, which involves removing yesterday's ashes and laying fresh kindling and logs in a precise arrangement that will catch quickly and burn efficiently. The wood must be dry. Damp logs create smoke that will fill the room and displease his lordship. You learned this lesson through painful experience during your first week, when improperly dried wood filled the chamber with acrid smoke and earned you a beating that left welts across your shoulders for weeks as you work in the pre-dawn darkness. Your movements must be completely silent. Lord Edmund sleeps late by servant standards, rising at dawn rather than the middle of the night like the working classes. And any noise that disturbs his rest results in immediate and severe punishment. You've learned to move like a ghost, sliding your feet across the floor rather than lifting them, handling every object with the delicacy of a master craftsman to avoid any sound that might betray your presence. The morning firelighting ritual has become a form of meditation born from necessity. Every movement must be deliberate and controlled, every piece of kindling placed with surgical precision. The flint and steel used to spark the fire must be struck with just enough force to create sparks without making noise. The entire process requires 15 minutes of intense concentration, during which a single mistake could ruin your entire day. But what makes this morning routine truly unbearable isn't the physical demands or even the fear of punishment. It's the knowledge that Lord Edmund's comfort depends entirely on your suffering, and that this dependency is considered natural and proper by everyone in the castle hierarchy. By the time Lord Edmund stirs in his luxurious bed, you've been working for 3 hours, and the most challenging part of your day is just beginning. The morning cleaning routine requires you to transform his lordship's chambers from the disorder of sleep into a pristine environment, suitable for receiving visitors and conducting the business of noble life. The chamber pot presents your first major challenge. Made of fine glazed pottery, decorated with painted flowers, artwork more beautiful than anything you've ever owned. This vessel contains the previous night's accumulation of Lord Edmund's bodily waste. You must empty it, scrub it clean, and return it to its designated position beside the bed. Without showing any sign of disgust or distaste that might offend his lordship's sensibilities, the trip from the Lord's chambers to the waste chute involves carrying the full chamber pot through corridors where you might encounter other members of the household. The social protocol requires you to stop and bow respectfully to anyone of higher rank while balancing a container of human excrement, a daily exercise in medieval etiquette that would be comical if it weren't so utterly degrading. The waste chute itself is a medieval engineering marvel that channels refuse from the castle's upper levels down through the walls to collection points below. The system works reasonably well when properly maintained, but the accumulated odors and occasional blockages create an environment so foul that you must hold your breath while working. The smell clings to your clothing and hair, marking you as clearly as a brand to identify your lowly status within the castle hierarchy. After disposing of the chamber pot's contents, you must scrub it clean using cold water and harsh soap that leaves your hands red and cracked. The cleaning process requires you to thrust your arm deep into the vessel to reach all surfaces, ensuring that no trace of waste or odor remains. The irony that this beautiful piece of pottery receives more careful attention than most people get in their entire lives isn't lost on you, but dwelling on such thoughts is a luxury you can't afford. The bed linens present their own unique challenges. Lord Edmund's sheets, made from fine linen that must be imported from distant regions, require handling with extreme care to avoid tears or stains. The fabric is so delicate that your rough, work-hardened hands can catch and pull threads, creating visible damage that will be noticed immediately. You've learned to work with your fingertips, moving slowly and carefully to avoid any contact that might mar the pristine surfaces. Changing the bed linens is a complex operation that must be performed with military precision. The massive mattress, stuffed with down and weighing as much as a small horse, must be lifted and rotated to ensure even wear. The sheets must be pulled tight and tucked with mathematical precision to eliminate any wrinkles or loose areas. The silk coverlets must be arranged in precise folds that create an appearance of casual elegance, while actually requiring meticulous attention to detail. The morning cleaning routine extends to every surface in the chambers. The oak furniture must be polished with beeswax until it gleams, requiring you to crawl on hands and knees to reach intricate carved details in table legs and chair backs. The tapestries must be beaten to remove dust and insects, creating clouds of particles that make breathing difficult and leave you coughing for hours afterward. The glass windows, perhaps the most challenging cleaning task in the medieval world, require a combination of vinegar, soft cloths, and infinite patience. The glass itself is uneven and full of bubbles and imperfections that make achieving true clarity nearly impossible. You must work section by section, cleaning and recleaning until no streaks or spots remain visible from any angle. A single missed spot will be noticed immediately and result in having to clean all the windows again around midday, when your back aches from bending and your knees are raw from crawling across stone floors. Lord Edmund typically receives visitors. This means you must make yourself invisible while continuing to work a skill that requires unenquity, requires supernatural awareness of your surroundings and the ability to predict the movements of your social superiors. The art of invisible service involves positioning yourself so that you can continue cleaning while remaining outside the direct line of sight of the room's occupants. You learn to work behind tapestries, in alcoves, and in corners where shadows provide concealment. Every movement must be silent. Every task performed without drawing attention that might disturb the important conversations taking place around you. But invisibility is more than just physical positioning. It's a mental state that requires you to suppress your natural human reactions to the conversations you overhear. Lord Edmund and his visitors discuss matters of war, politics, and commerce with casual indifference to the life and death implications for common people like yourself. You hear plans for tax increases that will starve peasant families, military campaigns that will kill thousands of young men, and trade arrangements that will enrich nobles while impoverishing everyone else. The psychological toll of this enforced invisibility is harder to bear than the physical demands of the work. You become a ghost in your own life, present but not acknowledged, hearing but not allowed to speak, seeing but expected to remain blind to the injustices you witness daily. The constant suppression of your natural human responses creates a splitting of consciousness that leaves you feeling disconnected from your own thoughts and emotions. The afternoon hours bring their own specific torments. The fires you lit in the morning begin to die down, requiring you to add wood and adjust the arrangements to maintain proper heat and light. But adding fuel to a fire while people are using the room requires timing and stealth that would challenge a professional spy. You must wait for moments when attention is focused elsewhere. Then move quickly and silently to complete the task without being noticed. The cleaning of personal items presents the most intimate and disturbing aspect of your duties. Lord Edmund's clothing, shoes, and personal effects must be maintained with the same attention to detail as the room's furnishings. This means handling items that have absorbed his bodily odors, cleaning leather goods that have been soiled with various substances, and organizing personal possessions with obsessive precision. As afternoon fades toward evening, the pace of work intensifies rather than slows. The evening cleaning routine is more thorough than the morning preparation, requiring you to address the day's accumulation of dust, dirt, and disorder while preparing the chambers for another night's rest. Every surface must be cleaned again, every item repositioned, every detail perfected. Before you can consider your day's work complete, the knowledge that tomorrow will bring exactly the same routine, the same chamber pots, the same bed linens, the same invisible service creates a crushing sense of futility that weighs as heavily as the physical exhaustion. You're trapped in an endless cycle of cleaning that serves no purpose except maintaining the comfort of someone who regards you as less than human. As the castle settles into evening routine, your workday enters its most treacherous phase. The flickering light from candles and oil lamps creates dancing shadows that make it difficult to see dirt and imperfections. Yet the standards for cleanliness remain just as exacting. You must clean by feel as much as by sight, running your hands over surfaces to detect problems that your eyes might miss in the inadequate illumination. The evening routine includes tasks that daylight mercifully conceals. You must empty and clean the washing basins that Lord Edmund uses for his personal hygiene, dealing with water that contains soap, scum, hair, and other bodily residues that have been soaking since morning. The water has developed an oily film, an unpleasant odor that makes the cleaning process particularly revolting. But any sign of disgust on your part would be interpreted as insolence worthy of punishment. The personal hygiene requirements of medieval nobility create some of your most unpleasant duties. Lord Edmund's razor must be cleaned and sharpened, a task that involves handling an instrument stained with soap, whiskers, and occasionally blood from shaving cuts. The metal basin used for washing must be scoured until it shines, despite being tarnished by soap residue and hard water deposits that resist all attempts at removal around 10 o'clock. When most servants are finally released from their duties, your evening work truly begins. Lord Edmund retires to his chambers, expecting to find an environment of perfect comfort and cleanliness, which means every task performed during the day must be repeated and perfected. The bed must be turned down with mathematical precision. The fire must be banked to provide warmth without creating too much light. And the chamber pot must be positioned exactly where his lordship expects to find it in the darkness. The evening fire management requires particular skill and experience. The logs must be arranged to burn slowly and steadily throughout the night, providing consistent warmth without creating flames bright enough to disturb sleep. Too much fire creates excessive heat and light. Too little leaves the room cold and uncomfortable. Finding the perfect balance requires understanding the burning characteristics of different woods, the airflow patterns in the room, and Lord Edmund's personal preferences for temperature and ambience. But the most challenging aspect of evening service is the requirement for absolute silence while working in a room where someone is trying to sleep. Every footstep must be carefully placed to avoid creaking floorboards, every task performed with movements so controlled that they produce no sound whatsoever. You've learned to identify which stones in the floor are loose and likely to shift under weight, which wooden planks will groan if stepped on, and which metal objects will clink if touched together. The psychological pressure of working in complete silence while maintaining perfect standards creates a state of hyper-awareness that is mentally exhausting. Every muscle in your body remains tense throughout the evening routine, ready to freeze at the first sign that you might be disturbing his lordship's rest. The constant vigilance required to move like a ghost while performing complex tasks pushes your nervous system to its breaking point when your evening duties are finally complete. Usually around midnight, you face the long journey back to your sleeping quarters in the castle's attic. The corridors are unheated and often slippery with condensation, making the walk treacherous in the darkness. You must feel your way along the walls, stepping carefully to avoid loose stones or patches of ice that could send you tumbling down the steep stairs. Your sleeping chamber offers little relief from the day's trials. The attic space is so cold that ice sometimes forms on the inside walls during winter nights. The straw mattresses have compressed over time into flat, lumpy surfaces that provide minimal cushioning against the wooden floor. The thin woolen blankets are infested with fleas and lice that bite constantly, adding to the misery of trying to rest after 18 hours of grueling labor. But physical discomfort isn't the only thing that prevents restful sleep. Your mind races with anxiety about the next day's work, reviewing every task and worrying about potential mistakes that could result in punishment. You replay conversations overheard during the day, trying to predict Lord Edmund's moods and preferences that might affect his expectations for service. The other chambermaids in your quarters provide no comfort or companionship. Everyone is too exhausted and worried about their own survival to offer emotional support to others. Conversations are brief and functional, focused on sharing information about work assignments or warnings about particular dangers to avoid. The grinding pressure of daily life has eroded the natural human tendency toward friendship and mutual aid, leaving each person isolated in their own private struggle for survival. Sleep, when it finally comes, brings no true rest. Are filled with images of the day's work, endless surfaces to clean, chamber pots to empty, fires to tend. You wake frequently throughout the night, jolted into consciousness by anxiety dreams about making mistakes or being punished. The few hours of unconsciousness you manage to achieve provide minimal recovery from the day's physical and mental exhaustion. The most disturbing realization comes in those dark hours before dawn, when exhaustion has stripped away your mental defenses and left you vulnerable to the full weight of your situation. You understand with crystal clarity that this existence, this daily cycle of degradation and exhaustion, represents your entire future. There is no escape, No hope of advancement, no possibility of change that doesn't involve death or complete destitution. The rats that scurry through the walls of your sleeping chamber have become your most honest companions. Unlike the humans around you, they make no pretense of caring about your welfare or respecting your dignity. Their straightforward selfishness is refreshing compared to the elaborate justifications your superiors construct for their cruelty. The rats take what they need to survive, just as the nobles do, but they don't dress it up in moral language about natural order and divine providence. During the winter months, the cold becomes another enemy that attacks you from multiple directions. The stone walls of the castle absorb and hold the frigid air, creating an environment so cold that water left in basins overnight forms solid ice. Your work dress, perpetually damp from washing and cleaning tasks, never fully dries during the brief hours you're not wearing it. Putting on frozen, damp clothing each morning becomes a daily ordeal that leaves you shivering violently for the first hour of work. The inadequate nutrition provided to servants makes your body struggle against cold even more difficult. Your daily food ration consists primarily, of course, bread made from barley and oats, thin porridge that's more water than grain, and occasional scraps of vegetables too withered or damaged to serve at the Lord's table. This diet provides barely enough calories to sustain life, let alone fuel the intensive physical labor required by your position. The chronic hunger affects more than just your physical strength. It impacts your mental capacity as well. Simple tasks that should be routine become difficult to remember and execute correctly. You find yourself standing in rooms, unable to recall what you came there to do, or completing cleaning tasks only to realize you've forgotten essential steps that will require starting over. The fog of malnutrition makes every aspect of your work more challenging and increases the likelihood of mistakes that result in punishment. Your appearance has changed dramatically since beginning work as a chambermaid. The constant exposure to harsh soaps and cleaning solutions has left your skin red, cracked, and prematurely aged. Your hair, unwashed for weeks at a time, has become dull and brittle. Your fingernails are permanently stained and broken from scrubbing surfaces and handling rough materials. Looking in the polished metal mirrors in Lord Edmund's chambers, you sometimes don't recognize the gaunt, hollow-eyed creature staring back at you. The social isolation of your position creates psychological damage that may be worse than the physical hardships. You exist in a world surrounded by people, but have no meaningful human connections. The other servants are too exhausted and worried about their own survival to form friendships. The noble class treats you as invisible, speaking around you as if you don't exist. You spend entire days without engaging in a single, genuine human interaction. Living in a state of social death while biologically alive, the religious teachings that supposedly provide comfort to the suffering ring hollow when you examine them against the reality of your daily experience. The priest speaks of enduring hardship as a path to heavenly reward. But you notice that this advice is primarily directed at the poor and powerless. The wealthy nobles who create and maintain the conditions of your suffering show no signs of embracing hardship themselves or worrying about their spiritual welfare. The seasonal changes that once marked the natural rhythm of life now serve only as reminders of time passing without improvement. Spring brings no renewal to your existence, only different forms of misery as the castle's residents increase their demands for cleaning and preparation. Summer's warmth provides brief physical relief, but intensifies the odors and pest problems that make your work environment even more unpleasant. Autumn signals the approach of another winter of cold and hunger, while winter itself represents months of suffering that test the limits of human endurance. As you lie in the darkness of your attic chamber, listening to the sounds of rats in the walls and the labored breathing of your fellow servants, you sometimes wonder if the rats might have chosen the better path. They take what they need without apology, answer to no master, and live according to their own natural instincts. Rather than artificial social hierarchies that crush the human spirit, the knowledge that tomorrow will bring exactly the same routine, the same chamber pots, the same invisible service, the same grinding cycle of exhaustion and humiliation, creates a form of despair so complete that it becomes almost peaceful. When hope dies completely, the struggle to maintain it also ends, leaving behind a strange form of acceptance that allows you to continue functioning even in circumstances that should destroy the human spirit. But perhaps the most tragic aspect of your situation isn't the physical suffering or even the social degradation. It's the way this existence gradually erodes your capacity to imagine any other way of living, until the world of your childhood memories seems like stories told about people who never really existed. The stable bell clangs through the pre-dawn darkness at 3 o'clock, echoing off the stone walls of Berkshire Castle like the tolling of doomsday. You've been working as a stable groom for 6 months now, and your body has yet to accept these brutal early mornings that begin your 18-hour workdays. The sleeping quarters you share with 4 other grooms occupy a space directly above the horse stalls, where the combined body heat of 20 destriers provides the only warmth available to servants of your lowly rank. Rolling off your straw-filled sack that serves as a mattress, you immediately feel the bite of December air that seeps through gaps in the wooden walls. The straw beneath you has compressed over months of use into a lumpy, uncomfortable surface that provides minimal cushioning against the rough wooden planks. Bits of straw have worked their way through the coarse fabric, creating an itchy, scratching sensation that leaves your skin covered with small welts and irritations. Your fellow grooms stir reluctantly in the darkness around you. Tom, who's been here for 2 years and serves as the unofficial leader of the stable hands, mutters the morning assignments through chattering teeth. William takes the warhorses, Peter handles the palfreys, and you... He points at you with a cracked finger. You've got the full cleaning rotation, plus Lord Aldrich's destrier Thunderbolt. The mention of Thunderbolt sends a chill through you that has nothing to do with the winter air. Lord Aldrich's personal warhorse stands 17. Hands high, weighs nearly 2,000 pounds, possesses a temperament that matches his owner's reputation for violence. The massive stallion has already sent 2 grooms to their graves, one kicked to death while cleaning his stall, another trampled during a routine grooming session. Your survival depends on reading the animal's moods and maintaining constant vigilance during every interaction. You feel around in the darkness for your work clothes, a rough woolen tunic that once belonged to a groom who died during the autumn fever outbreak, leather breeches that are more patches than original material, and wooden clogs that offer minimal protection against horse hooves and the constant dampness of stable floors. The tunic hangs loose on your undernourished frame, while the breeches bind uncomfortably in places where the previous owner's body shape differed from yours. The leather belt around your waist holds the essential tools of your trade, a hoof pick for cleaning stones and debris from horse hooves, a curved blade for scraping manure from stall floors, and a small eating knife that serves double duty for cutting rope and defending yourself if a horse becomes violent. These tools represent the extent of your worldly possessions. Everything you own can be carried on your person, a stark reminder of how precarious your position truly is. Your first task involves lighting the oil lamps that provide illumination. For the pre-dawn work, the stable master, who considers lamp oil too expensive to waste on servant comfort, allows only the minimum lighting necessary to prevent accidents that might damage valuable horses. You work primarily by feel and memory, navigating between massive animals in near total darkness, while carrying tools that could prove fatal if you stumble or make sudden movements. The smell of the stables hits you like a physical blow every morning, a concentrated mixture of horse manure, wet straw, leather, metal, and the musky odors of large animals living in close confinement. After 6 months, you've become somewhat accustomed to the smell. but it still makes breathing difficult during the first hour of work. The ammonia fumes from accumulated urine burn your eyes and throat, leaving you with a persistent cough that never completely goes away. 20 horses occupy the castle's main stable, ranging from Lord Aldrich's war horses to the smaller palfreys, used by noble ladies and the sturdy rounceys that serve as everyday mounts for knights and men-at-arms. Each animal represents more wealth than your family has seen in generations. A good destrier costs 200 silver marks, enough to buy a small farm or support a peasant family for several years. The hierarchy among the horses mirrors the social structure of the castle itself. The destriers, massive war horses bred for carrying armored knights into battle, occupy the largest and most comfortable stalls. Their feed consists of the finest oats, barley, and hay, carefully measured and mixed to maintain their strength and condition. The palfreys, elegant riding horses used by noble ladies, receive slightly less luxurious treatment, but still live in conditions far superior to those of any servant. Your responsibility for 20 horses means you must complete the morning feeding, watering, and initial cleaning before the castle's human residents begin their day. Each horse requires approximately 15 minutes of attention, creating a schedule so tight that any delay or mistake throws the entire routine into chaos. You've learned to move with mechanical efficiency, completing each task with a minimum necessary actions while maintaining the quality standards that prevent punishment. The feeding process requires knowledge of each horse's individual needs and preferences. Thunderbolt, for instance, requires his oats mixed with chopped apples to encourage eating, while Lady Eleanor's palfrey needs her hay dampened to prevent coughing. Getting these details wrong can result in sick horses, angry owners, and severe punishment for the responsible groom. Water for the horses must be carried in heavy buckets from the castle's well, a task that requires dozens of trips up and down stone steps that become treacherously slippery when wet. Each horse drinks between 5 and 10 gallons per day, meaning you must transport nearly 200 gallons of water daily just for the morning watering. The buckets, made of wood, reinforced with iron bands, weigh 30 pounds when full and leave deep grooves in your palms from the rope handles. The physical demands of stable work begin destroying your body from the first day. Your back aches constantly from bending to clean stalls and hooves, your shoulders burn from carrying water buckets, and your hands are permanently stained and cut from handling rough tools and sharp metal equipment. The work requires strength that your undernourished body struggles to provide, creating a cycle where inadequate nutrition makes the work harder, which in turn makes you more prone to mistakes that result in reduced food rations. But the most dangerous aspect of stable work isn't the physical labor. It's the constant proximity to animals that can kill you without warning. Horses are prey animals with lightning-fast reflexes and powerful defensive instincts. A startled horse can kick with enough force to shatter bones or crush internal organs. Even gentle horses can cause serious injury through accidental stepping or sudden movements in confined spaces. As you work through the morning routine, the knowledge that one mistake, one moment of inattention, one unpredictable animal reaction could end your life creates a state of constant vigilance that is mentally exhausting. You must remain alert to every sound, every movement, every change in an animal's posture or behavior that might signal danger. This hyper-awareness, maintained for 18 hours daily, pushes your nervous system to its limits and beyond. The social isolation of stable work compounds the physical and mental challenges. You spend most of your time alone with the horses, who make better companions than most humans in the castle, but cannot provide the social interaction necessary for psychological health. The other grooms are too exhausted and worried about their own survival to form meaningful friendships, leaving you trapped in a world of isolation despite being surrounded by living creatures. As the first pale light of dawn filters through the stable's high windows, your morning routine shifts into its most critical phase, preparing the horses for their human owners' daily activities. The arrival of daylight means the castle's noble residents will soon require their mounts, and any horse that isn't perfectly groomed, fed, and ready for service will result in immediate punishment for the responsible groom. Lord Aldrich's Destrier. Thunderbolt represents your greatest challenge and your most constant source of terror. The massive warhorse requires an hour of intensive grooming to meet his owner's exacting standards. But every moment spent in his stall carries the risk of sudden death. Thunderbolt has killed 2 grooms and seriously injured 3 others. Yet, Lord Aldrich demands the same level of care that would be provided to a gentle palfrey. Entering Thunderbolt's stall requires a ritual of careful preparation that you've developed through months of trial and error. First, you must announce your presence with specific sounds and movements that the horse has learned to associate with grooming time. Any sudden appearance or unexpected noise can trigger the animal's defensive instincts, resulting in kicks powerful enough to shatter your skull or crush your rib cage. The grooming process itself is a delicate dance performed within striking distance of hooves that could kill you instantly. You must brush the horse's coat in specific patterns, working from front to back and top to bottom, while maintaining constant awareness of his ears, tail, and leg positions that signal his emotional state. A pinned ear warns of annoyance. Swishing tail indicates impatience, and a lifted hind leg suggests an imminent kick that you must dodge or die. Thunderbolt's tack his saddle, bridle, and associated equipment represents more wealth than most villages see in a year. The saddle alone, crafted from the finest leather and decorated with silver fittings, cost 40 silver marks. The bridle, with its intricate metalwork and silk-wrapped reins, could feed a peasant family for 6 months. Your responsibility for maintaining this equipment in perfect condition creates another layer of stress in an already impossible situation. The leather requires daily cleaning with expensive oils and waxes that must be applied in precise amounts to prevent cracking or staining. Too little oil leaves the leather dry and prone to damage. Too much creates a greasy surface that collects dirt and compromises the rider's grip. The metal fittings must be polished to a mirror shine, free from any trace of rust or tarnish that might offend Lord Aldrich's aesthetic sensibilities. Around mid-morning, when your back already aches from 3 hours of bending and lifting, the real test of your day begins, saddling and bridling the horses for their owner's use. This process requires perfect coordination between your movements and the animal's natural responses. Performed under the watchful eyes of impatient nobles who have no tolerance for delays or mistakes. Saddling Thunderbolt is like performing surgery while someone holds a sword to your throat. The heavy war saddle must be positioned with mathematical precision. Too far forward interferes with the horse's shoulder movement. Too far back puts pressure on his kidneys. The girth, a wide strap that secures the saddle, must be tightened gradually to prevent the horse from panicking, but any looseness could cause the saddle to slip during riding, potentially killing Lord Aldrich and certainly ensuring your execution. The bridle requires even more delicate handling, as it involves manipulating the horse's head and mouth while standing directly in front of his most dangerous weapons. Thunderbolt's teeth can crush bone, and his head weighs nearly 100 pounds. A casual toss can break your neck if you're not positioned correctly. You must slip the bit into his mouth while avoiding his teeth. Position the straps around his ears without triggering his claustrophobia. And adjust everything to exact specifications while he shifts restlessly and considers whether to kill you. The psychological pressure of working under constant observation adds another dimension to the morning routine. Lord Aldrich watches your every movement with the calculating gaze of someone evaluating a potentially defective tool. Any sign of hesitation, any moment of clumsiness, any indication that his horse isn't receiving the best possible care is noted and remembered for future punishment. You perform your duties knowing that your life depends not only on avoiding the horse's hooves, but also on maintaining the appearance of effortless competence for your human audience. But Thunderbolt is only one of 20 horses requiring attention. While preparing, the Lord's destrier occupies the morning's most dangerous hour. The remaining animals still need grooming, feeding, and preparation for their respective riders. The sheer volume of work creates a time pressure that makes mistakes. More likely, the mistakes around horses tend to be fatal. The palfrey belonging to Lady Eleanor requires its own specialized care routine. The elegant mare is less dangerous than Thunderbolt, but more temperamental, prone to fits of anxiety that can result in broken equipment or injured handlers. Her grooming must be gentle enough to avoid triggering nervousness, but thorough enough to maintain the pristine appearance expected of a noble lady's mount. The side saddle she uses is a masterpiece of medieval craftsmanship that costs more than a skilled craftsman earns in 5 years. The rounceys used by knights and men-at-arms represent the bulk of your workload. These sturdy horses require less delicate handling than the nobles' mounts, but still possess the strength and speed to kill carelessly handled grooms. Their equipment, while less ornate than that used by the highest nobility, still represents significant wealth that you're expected to maintain in perfect condition. The midday feeding routine requires carrying hay from the castle stores to each stall, a task that involves dozens of trips, while balancing armloads of fodder that obstruct your vision and make it difficult to react quickly to horse movements. The hay itself is often moldy or dusty, filling the air with particles that make breathing difficult and trigger coughing fits that can startle horses. Into violent reactions, water troughs must be refilled constantly throughout the day, as horses are notorious for fouling their drinking water by dropping food, saliva, and other contaminants. The process of cleaning and refilling 20 water troughs requires hours of labor and hundreds of gallons of water that must be carried by hand from distant sources. Your shoulders ache constantly from the weight of full buckets, and your hands are permanently scarred from rope burns and metal edges. The afternoon hours bring their own special challenges as returning riders bring back horses that are hot, sweaty, and often agitated from their activities. A horse returning from a hunting expedition may be excited and difficult to control, while one coming back from military exercises might be nervous and unpredictable. Your job is to calm these animals, remove their tack, and prepare them for rest, all while they're in potentially dangerous emotional states. But perhaps the most soul-crushing aspect of stable work is the knowledge that the animals you care for live better than you do. The horses eat regularly, sleep in comfortable bedding, receive medical attention when sick, and are valued for their individual worth. You survive on scraps, sleep on straw-filled sacks, work through illness and injury, and are considered replaceable property whose only value lies in your capacity for manual labor. As evening settles over the castle, your day enters its most treacherous phase. The horses, tired from their daily activities, become unpredictable in ways that daylight hours don't reveal. A destrier that seemed manageable during morning grooming transforms into a 1,000-pound threat when fatigue and darkness combine to heighten his natural wariness. The inadequate lighting from oil lamps creates shifting shadows that spook even the gentlest animals, turning routine tasks into life-threatening gambles. The evening routine requires removing tack from returning horses, a process that should be straightforward but becomes dangerous when performed on animals that are sweaty, tired, and potentially injured from their day's activities. Thunderbolt returns from Lord Aldrich's afternoon ride in a state of barely controlled aggression, his coat slick with sweat and his eyes showing the whites that signal extreme agitation. Removing his saddle and bridle requires approaching an animal that could kill you with casual indifference, while your exhausted reflexes struggle to maintain the split-second timing necessary for survival. The heavy war saddle, soaked with horse sweat and weighing nearly 60 pounds, must be lifted off Thunderbolt's back while standing close enough to his hindquarters to be killed instantly if he decides to kick. Your undernourished muscles tremble, with the effort of controlling the unwieldy saddle while watching for signs of impending violence from the animal. The wet leather slips in your grip, threatening to fall and potentially injure both you and the horse, an accident that would certainly result in your execution. Once the tack is removed, each piece must be cleaned and maintained before being stored for the next day's use. The leather, darkened with sweat and sometimes blood from the day's activities, requires scrubbing with harsh soaps that leave your hands raw and bleeding. The metal fittings must be dried and oiled to prevent rust, a process that involves handling sharp edges and pointed objects in poor lighting conditions that make cuts and punctures inevitable. The grooming required after a day's riding is more intensive than the morning routine, as horses return covered with mud, sweat, and sometimes blood from hunting or military activities. You must remove dried sweat and dirt from their coats using curry combs that can injure both you and the animals if not handled properly. The process requires getting close to tired horses whose patience has been exhausted by their day's work, creating situations where a normally manageable animal becomes a deadly threat. Thunderbolt's evening grooming represents the day's greatest challenge. The massive destrier's coat must be cleaned until it gleams, his hooves picked free of stones and debris, his mane and tail combed smooth, and his entire body checked for injuries that might require the expensive attention of the castle's horse leech. Any injury discovered on Lord Aldrich's personal mount becomes your responsibility, regardless of how it occurred, potentially resulting in punishment severe enough to cripple or kill you. The process of cleaning Thunderbolt's hooves requires lifting each of his 4 legs in turn, supporting the weight of a limb that could crush your skull if he decides to put it down suddenly. You must dig packed dirt and stones from his hooves using a sharp metal pick, working inches away from legs powerful enough to kick through castle walls. The horse's natural instinct is to pull his feet away from handling, creating a constant struggle between your need to clean thoroughly and his desire to be left alone. The stable cleaning routine extends far beyond caring for the horses themselves. 20 stalls must be mucked out daily, removing the accumulated manure and wet bedding that creates both health hazards and overwhelming odors. The manure, while valuable as fertilizer for the castle's gardens, must be loaded into wheelbarrows and transported to designated areas, a process that involves handling tons of waste daily while breathing air thick with ammonia fumes. Fresh bedding must be spread in each stall after the old material is removed, requiring hundreds of pounds of straw to be carried from the castle's stores and distributed evenly across the stable floors. The straw bales weigh more than you do and must be broken apart by hand, filling the air with dust and chaff that makes breathing difficult. Your chronic cough, worsened by constant exposure to these particles, leaves you weakened and struggling for breath during the most physically demanding tasks. The water troughs that seemed manageable during daylight hours become treacherous obstacles in the flickering lamplight. Carrying buckets of water across uneven stable floors while navigating around unpredictable horses requires constant vigilance to avoid spills that waste precious water or create slippery conditions that could result in fatal falls. Each bucket represents a dangerous journey through a maze of potential death, repeated dozens of times throughout the evening routine. The equipment storage and maintenance. Tasks that conclude each day require handling leather goods, metal tools, and wooden implements that have been worn and damaged by daily use. Broken equipment must be repaired immediately. There are no spare saddles or bridles to replace damaged items, and any delay in repairs means horses cannot be used the next day, resulting in fury from their noble owners and severe punishment for responsible grooms as the evening routine stretches toward midnight. Your exhausted body begins to fail in ways that make the work increasingly dangerous. Simple tasks that should be routine become difficult to execute properly. Your hands shake with fatigue, making it hard to maintain the steady grip necessary for controlling nervous horses. Your vision blurs from exhaustion and the effects of breathing dust and ammonia fumes for 18 hours, making it difficult to see obstacles or read the subtle body language that signals a horse's intentions. The final task of each day, banking the stable fires to provide warmth for the horses during the night, requires careful attention to detail when your mind can barely focus on simple tasks. Too much fire creates a risk of burning down the stable and killing 20 valuable horses along with yourself. Too little fire leaves the animals cold and uncomfortable, resulting in illness that brings punishment and potentially death for the responsible groom when you finally climb the ladder to your sleeping quarters above the stalls. Your body is so exhausted that simple movements become monumental efforts. The straw-filled sack that serves as your bed feels like luxury after 18 hours of standing, bending, lifting, and struggling to avoid death at the hooves of the animals you serve. But sleep brings no true rest. Your dreams are filled with images of thundering hooves, snapping teeth, and the constant terror of working around creatures that could kill you without malice or intention. The knowledge that tomorrow will bring exactly the same routine, the same dangerous grooming, the same back-breaking labor, the same constant proximity to death creates a despair so complete that it becomes almost peaceful. When hope dies entirely, the struggle to maintain it also ends, leaving behind a numb acceptance that allows you to continue functioning in circumstances that should destroy the human spirit. But perhaps the most tragic realization comes in those dark hours before dawn, when exhaustion strips away your mental defenses. You understand that the horses you risk your life to serve are valued more highly than you are, not just financially, but as living beings deserving of care and consideration. A sick horse receives immediate attention from skilled healers, while a sick groom is expected to continue working until he drops dead and can be replaced. The kitchen bells begin their merciless clanging at 2 o'clock in the morning, shattering what little sleep you've managed to steal in the brief hours since yesterday's labors finally ended. You've been working as a kitchen servant at Dover Castle for 4 months now, and your body exists in a state of constant exhaustion that sleep never fully resolves. The sleeping quarters you share with 8 other kitchen servants occupy a cramped space in the castle's basement, where the stone walls weep with moisture and the air carries the perpetual smell of cooking fires, rancid grease, and human misery. Rolling off your straw mattress, a generous term for the collection of moldy straw stuffed into a sack that provides minimal separation between your body and the cold stone floor. You immediately feel the oppressive heat rising from the kitchens below. Even in the depths of winter, the massive cooking fires that burn constantly to serve the castle's needs create an environment so hot and humid that breathing becomes difficult. The air shimmers with grease particles and smoke that coat every surface with a sticky film that never fully disappears. Your fellow kitchen servants begin stirring reluctantly around you. Martha, the senior serving woman who survived 3 years in this hell and therefore commands grudging respect, croaks out the morning assignments through a throat permanently damaged by inhaling smoke and steam. Sarah takes the bread ovens. Tom handles the spitfires, and she fixes you with eyes that have seen too much suffering. You're on the main preparation area with Cook Aldrich. The mention of Cook Aldrich sends ice through your veins despite the suffocating heat. The head cook of Dover Castle has earned his position through a combination of culinary skill and savage cruelty that makes him more feared than most knights. Standing nearly 7 feet tall and weighing as much as a small horse, Cook Aldrich rules his domain with iron fists that have crushed the bones of servants who displeased him. His scarred face and missing left eye, casualties of a kitchen fire that killed 2 scullery maids, give him the appearance of a demon escaped from hell's own cooking pits. You stumble toward your work clothes in the oppressive darkness, feeling for the rough woolen tunic and canvas apron that represent your daily armor against the hazards of kitchen work. The tunic, originally brown, has been stained so thoroughly with grease, blood, and various food substances that it's now a mottled pattern of browns, yellows, and dark red stains that never wash out completely. The canvas apron, thick enough to provide some protection against splashing grease and hot liquids, hangs heavy with accumulated grime and carries odors that make your eyes water. The wooden clogs you wear provide minimal protection against the hazards of kitchen floors that are constantly wet with spilled liquids, ranging from water to boiling grease to substances you prefer not to identify. The soles are worn nearly through from 4 months of navigating surfaces that would challenge a mountain climber. Kitchen floors become treacherously slippery when wet, and everything in a medieval kitchen is always wet with something potentially dangerous. Your first task requires descending into the main kitchen area, a cavernous space dominated by 3 massive fireplaces that could each hold an entire ox. The heat hits you like a physical blow, even at 2 in the morning when the fires are banked low for the night. During peak cooking hours, the temperature in the kitchen reaches levels that make the work almost unbearable, with servants regularly collapsing from heat exhaustion and dehydration. The kitchen fires burn constantly throughout the year, consuming enormous quantities of wood that must be cut, transported, and fed into the flames by servants whose job description includes fuel management along with food preparation. The smoke from these fires, trapped by the kitchen's low stone ceiling, creates an atmosphere so thick that visibility is limited to a few feet in any direction. Your lungs, after 4 months of breathing this toxic air, have developed a chronic cough that produces black phlegm and leaves you struggling for breath during physical exertion. Cook Aldrich emerges from the shadows like a nightmare made flesh, his massive frame moving with surprising grace for someone of his size. His voice, when he speaks, carries the authority of absolute power over life and death in his kitchen. His word is law, and disobedience can result in punishments ranging from beatings to deliberate accidents involving hot oil or sharp knives. "You'll be handling the morning slaughtering," he announces, pointing toward a wooden table stained dark with years of blood. 12 chickens, 6 rabbits, and 2 lambs for the Lord's breakfast preparations. Any meat that's improperly butchered goes into the servant's pot, and your rations get reduced accordingly. The slaughtering table represents one of the most disturbing aspects of kitchen work, the daily necessity of killing animals for food while maintaining the mechanical efficiency required to feed a castle full of people. The chickens aren't difficult to kill, but the process of wringing their necks and plucking their feathers creates scenes of violence that would horrify anyone not driven by starvation to accept any available work. The rabbits require more skill to kill cleanly, and your inexperience with the process often results in prolonged suffering. That makes the work emotionally traumatic as well as physically demanding. You must skin and gut each animal while it's still warm, working with sharp knives on slippery surfaces while Cook Aldrich watches for any sign of hesitation or revulsion that might indicate weakness, unsuitable for kitchen work. But the lambs represent the greatest challenge to both your technical skills and your emotional stability. These young animals, barely weaned from their mothers, must be killed with a single precise cut to the throat that severs the major blood vessels while avoiding damage to the meat. The process requires holding a struggling, bleeding animal while making accurate cuts with sharp knives, a combination of butchery skills and emotional detachment that tests the limits of human adaptability. The blood from slaughtered animals must be collected and used for various culinary purposes, from blood sausages to sauces that enhance the flavor of noble dishes. This means working with your hands submerged in warm blood, while maintaining the sterile conditions necessary to prevent spoilage. The smell of fresh blood, combined with the heat and smoke of the kitchen, creates an atmosphere that would make most people violently ill. The butchering process produces various waste products that must be disposed of properly to prevent attracting rats and other vermin. Feathers, bones, and inedible organs must be separated and transported to designated areas, while useful parts like livers, hearts, and kidneys are prepared for cooking. Nothing is wasted in a medieval kitchen, even the most unappetizing animal. Parts find their way into servants' meals or are used to make stocks and broths as you work through the morning slaughter routine. Your hands become permanently stained with blood that no amount of washing can remove completely. The red-brown discoloration under your fingernails and in the creases of your palms marks you as clearly as a brand, identifying your position in the castle hierarchy to anyone who sees your hands. The stains serve as a constant reminder of the violence that underlies the comfortable lives of your social superiors. The physical demands of butchering work begin destroying your body from the first day. Your hands develop permanent cramps from gripping knives and restraining struggling animals. Your back aches constantly from bending over the slaughtering table. Your arms burn with fatigue from the repetitive motions required to process dozens of animals daily. The work requires physical strength that your undernourished body struggles to provide, creating a cycle where inadequate nutrition makes the work harder, which increases the likelihood of mistakes that result in reduced food rations. But the most disturbing aspect of kitchen slaughter work isn't the physical demands or even the emotional trauma of killing animals. It's the gradual erosion of your natural empathy and compassion as you adapt to daily violence. You find yourself becoming mechanically efficient at ending lives, developing the emotional detachment necessary to function in an environment where sensitivity is a liability that interferes with productivity. The transformation from normal human being to efficient killing machine happens so gradually that you don't notice it until you realize you no longer feel anything when taking an animal's life. This emotional numbing, necessary for psychological survival in your work environment, extends beyond the slaughtering table to affect your capacity for human connection and emotional response in all areas of life. By the time the castle's morning bells announce dawn to the civilized world above, you've already been working for 4 hours in conditions that would challenge the endurance of hardened soldiers. The kitchen has transformed from the merely oppressive environment of pre-dawn slaughter into a blazing crucible where human beings are systematically reduced to their most basic survival instincts. The 3 massive fireplaces now roar with flames hot enough to soften iron, turning the kitchen into a vision of hell that medieval artists could never adequately capture. Cook Aldrich assigns you to the spit rotation, a task that combines back-breaking physical labor with the constant risk of severe burns or death. The main spit, designed to roast an entire ox, requires continuous turning to ensure even cooking, a process that takes 6 hours of uninterrupted labor performed inches away from flames hot enough to ignite your clothing. The iron handle of the spit becomes so hot that touching it with bare skin results in immediate burns. Yet the work must continue, regardless of pain or injury. The protective rags wrapped around your hands provide minimal insulation against the heat radiating from the roasting fire. Within minutes of beginning the spit rotation, the cloth begins to smolder, filling your nostrils with the acrid smell of burning fabric mixed with your own sweat. The heat is so intense that you must shield your face with your free arm while maintaining the steady rhythm of turning that prevents the meat from burning on one side and remaining raw on the other. The ox roasting on the main spit weighs nearly 800 pounds. And the mechanical advantage provided by the iron gearing system still requires enormous physical effort to maintain rotation. Your shoulders burn with the constant strain of turning the heavy mechanism, while your legs shake from the effort of maintaining balance on the slippery stone floor. The grease dripping from the roasting meat creates a treacherous surface that has claimed the lives of 3 kitchen servants who slipped and fell into the fire during your brief tenure. Around mid-morning, the heat becomes almost unbearable. Cook Aldrich assigns additional tasks that must be performed simultaneously. With the spit rotation, you must baste the roasting meat every few minutes with a mixture of wine, herbs, and rendered fat, a process that requires reaching directly over the flames with a long-handled spoon while maintaining the steady turning motion. The basting liquid occasionally ignites, creating brief flare-ups that singe your eyebrows and leave your face feeling scorched. The smaller spits, used for roasting chickens, rabbits, and joints of pork, require constant attention to prevent overcooking or burning. Each spit operates on a different schedule, creating a complex juggling act where you must monitor multiple cooking processes while maintaining the primary. Responsibility for the main ox roast. The mental strain of tracking these various timelines, combined with the physical exhaustion of continuous labor, creates a state of barely controlled chaos that defines kitchen work. The serving of meals to the castle's noble residents represents the most stressful period of your day. The food must be presented at precisely the right temperature, which means timing the removal from fires to coincide exactly with the moment of service. Too early, and the food cools to an unacceptable temperature. Too late, and the delay disrupts the formal dining schedule that governs noble life. Either mistake results in punishment that can range from beatings to deliberate accidents involving hot oil or sharp knives. The Great Hall, where the nobility dines in comfort and luxury, seems like another world compared to the hellish environment of the kitchen. Tapestries depicting hunting scenes cover the walls, while musicians provide entertainment during meals that stretch for hours. The contrast between the civilized atmosphere of the dining hall and the brutal conditions of the kitchen that makes it possible creates a cognitive dissonance that challenges your ability to maintain sanity. But your role in the dining process doesn't end with cooking. You must also serve the meals, carrying heavy platters of food through corridors and upstairs while maintaining the appearance of effortless grace expected of servants. The serving dishes made of silver and pewter become dangerously hot from contact with the food and must be handled with rags that provide inadequate protection. Burns on your hands and forearms from hot serving dishes are considered normal occupational hazards that receive no medical attention. The formal service of meals requires adherence to strict protocols that govern every aspect of food presentation. Each dish must be carried in a specific manner, placed on the table at precisely the right moment, and removed according to elaborate rules that vary based on the rank of the diners. A single mistake in service protocol can result in public humiliation and physical punishment that serves as entertainment for the noble diners. The leftover food from noble meals represents both tantalizing hope and crushing disappointment for starving servants. Whole joints of meat, barely touched by the diners, are scraped into waste containers while you survive on thin porridge and stale bread. The casual waste of food that could sustain your life for days demonstrates more clearly than words the vast gulf between your value as a human being and the importance placed on noble comfort. The afternoon hours bring the preparation for the evening feast, which requires cooking quantities of food that strain the kitchen's capacity to its limits. Dozens of chickens must be roasted simultaneously, creating a hellish environment where the temperature rises to levels that make breathing difficult. The stone walls of the kitchen become so hot that touching them results in burns, while the air shimmers with heat waves that distort vision and make accurate work nearly impossible. The preparation of sauces and side dishes requires skills that you've had to develop through trial and error, as no formal training is provided to kitchen servants. The complex seasonings and cooking techniques that create the flavors expected by noble palates must be learned through observation and experimentation, with mistakes resulting in wasted ingredients and severe punishment. The pressure to perform perfectly while learning on the job creates a state of constant anxiety that affects your ability to concentrate on the detailed work required. The evening service brings its own unique challenges as tired servants struggle to maintain the standards expected by increasingly demanding nobles. The heat of the kitchen, combined with the physical exhaustion of working for 14 hours, creates conditions where accidents become more likely. Hot oil spills, knife cuts, and burns from cooking surfaces are daily occurrences that must be endured without complaint or medical attention. The noble's evening entertainment often extends the dining process far beyond normal hours, requiring kitchen staff to maintain food at serving temperature for indefinite periods. This means keeping fires burning at peak intensity while standing, ready to serve additional courses at a moment's notice. The unpredictability of noble dining schedules creates situations where servants must remain alert and ready for hours of additional work after completing what should be a full day's labor. The social dynamics of the kitchen create additional stress beyond the physical demands of the work. The hierarchy among kitchen staff mirrors the brutal competition for survival that characterizes all aspects of medieval life. Senior servants maintain their positions through a combination of skill, ruthlessness, and willingness to sacrifice subordinates to protect themselves from punishment. Alliances form and dissolve based on immediate survival needs, creating an environment where trust is impossible and betrayal is routine. The constant fear of punishment or dismissal creates a psychological state that affects every aspect of your existence. Sleep becomes elusive as anxiety about the next day's work prevents rest. Appetite disappears despite chronic hunger, as stress interferes with digestion. The capacity for joy or pleasure gradually erodes under the relentless pressure of survival, leaving behind a hollow shell of a human being focused solely on avoiding pain and death. But perhaps the most soul-crushing aspect of kitchen work is the knowledge that the food you prepare with such care and effort will be consumed by people who regard you as less than human. The elaborate meals that require hours of dangerous, exhausting labor are eaten by nobles who would step over your dead body without a second thought. The disconnect between the value placed on culinary perfection and the complete disregard for the welfare of those who create it represents a form of moral horror that challenges the foundations of human civilization. As the evening feast concludes and the last noble retires to comfortable chambers, your day enters what should be its final phase, but instead becomes another nightmare of endless labor. The kitchen, already hellish during active cooking hours, transforms into a landscape of destruction that must be restored to functional condition before the cycle begins anew. The massive cleanup required after feeding hundreds of people creates working conditions that push human endurance beyond its breaking point. The great fireplaces that dominated your day with their roaring flames now smolder with accumulated grease and food debris that must be cleaned while the surfaces remain dangerously hot. The stone hearths, blackened with soot and crusted with burned food particles, require scrubbing with wire brushes and lye soap that burns your hands and fills the air with caustic fumes. The iron spits, still warm from hours of roasting, must be scraped clean of grease and meat residue that has hardened into a substance resembling black tar. The serving dishes returned from the great hall carry the remnants of the evening's feast, congealed fats, wine stains, and food scraps that have hardened into substances requiring aggressive scrubbing to remove. The silver platters, worth more than your family's annual income, must be cleaned with the same painstaking care used for religious artifacts. Any scratches or stains that survive your cleaning efforts will result in punishment severe enough to serve as entertainment for the castle's residents. The massive cooking pots, some large enough to hold an entire person, contain layers of burned food that have accumulated over the day's cooking. The process of cleaning these vessels requires climbing partially inside them while scrubbing with caustic solutions that burn your skin and make breathing difficult. The confined space traps heat and chemical fumes, creating conditions that regularly cause servants to pass out and fall into the pots they're trying to clean. The floor of the kitchen, by evening's end, resembles a battlefield covered with the debris of culinary warfare. Spilled grease has mixed with food scraps, ash from the fires, and various liquids to create a slippery, treacherous surface that must be cleaned with mops and buckets of scalding water. The process requires kneeling on stone floors that are still hot from the day's fires while handling. Cleaning solutions that burn any exposed skin. The grease traps and drainage systems that carry away. The kitchen's liquid waste require daily cleaning to prevent blockages that could flood the entire area with sewage. This task involves reaching into dark, fetid spaces filled with rotting food particles and liquid fat that is solidified into a substance more disgusting than anything found in the castle's latrines. The smell alone is enough to cause violent nausea, but the work must be completed regardless of physical revulsion. Around midnight, when most of the castle sleeps in relative comfort, the kitchen staff begins the preparation work for the next day's meals. Vegetables must be cleaned, and chopped meat must be prepared for roasting, and fires must be banked to maintain the correct temperature for morning cooking. The work continues in an endless cycle that allows no time for rest or recovery between days of grueling labor. The bread ovens, which have been baking continuously throughout the day, require their own specialized cleaning routine. The stone interiors, heated to temperatures that can melt copper, must be swept clean of ash and debris while still hot enough to cause severe burns. The long-handled tools used for this work become so hot that they must be wrapped in wet cloth to prevent burns. But the cloth quickly dries and begins to smolder in the intense heat. The slaughter area, where you began your day with the killing of animals for food, requires thorough cleaning to prevent the accumulation of blood and organic matter that attracts rats and other vermin. The wooden butchering blocks must be scraped clean and treated with salt to prevent bacterial growth, while the knives and other tools must be sharpened and oiled to maintain their effectiveness. The entire area must be scrubbed with lye soap and scalding water until no trace of blood or organic matter remains visible. The storage areas for ingredients and supplies require constant vigilance to prevent spoilage and contamination. Grain sacks must be inspected for signs of rodent damage, while preserved meats must be checked for spoilage that could poison the castle's residents. The responsibility for food safety falls entirely on the kitchen staff, with any incidents of food poisoning resulting in severe punishment for the servants, regardless of the actual cause. As the cleanup routine stretches toward dawn, your exhausted body begins to fail in ways that make the work increasingly dangerous. Simple tasks that should be routine become difficult to execute properly when fatigue has dulled your reflexes and clouded your judgment. The hot surfaces and sharp tools that fill the kitchen become even more hazardous when handled by servants who can barely remain conscious after 20 hours of continuous labor. The water used for cleaning must be carried from distant sources, in buckets that weigh more than your undernourished body can safely handle. The process of filling, carrying, and emptying these buckets dozens of times throughout the night creates a form of torture that would be considered excessive if applied. 2 prisoners of war. The rope handles cut deep grooves in your palms, while the weight of the bucket strains your back beyond its capacity to recover. The final task of each day requires banking the fires to maintain the proper temperature for morning cooking, while ensuring that no dangerous accumulation of coals or ash threatens the safety of the kitchen. The process requires intimate knowledge of fire management that you've had to develop through trial and error, with mistakes potentially resulting in fires that could destroy the entire castle. The responsibility for this critical task falls on servants who are often too exhausted to think clearly about the complex calculations required. When you finally collapse onto your straw mattress in the early hours of the morning, your body is so damaged and exhausted that sleep brings no relief from pain. Your hands, burned and cut from the day's work, throb with agony that prevents rest. Your lungs, damaged from breathing smoke and chemical fumes, struggle to extract oxygen from the thick air of the servants' quarters. Your back, strained from Hours of lifting and bending, spasms with pain that shoots through your entire body. The few hours of unconsciousness you manage to achieve are filled with nightmares of fire, blood, and the endless repetition of tasks that define your waking existence. You dream of turning spits that never finish cooking, of cleaning pots that refill themselves with grease, of fires that burn without consuming their fuel. The nightmares are so vivid that you often wake believing you're still working your hands, moving through the motions of stirring and scraping even as you lie on your straw bed, the knowledge that the next day will bring exactly the same routine, the same slaughter. The same fires, the same endless cleaning creates a despair so complete that it transcends normal human emotion. You exist in a state beyond hope or fear, reduced to the basic biological functions necessary for survival. The person you were before entering the kitchen has been burned away as completely as the food scraps in the great fires, leaving behind only the mechanical responses necessary to avoid immediate death. But perhaps the most horrifying realization comes in those brief moments of clarity between sleep and waking. You understand that this existence, this daily cycle of violence, exhaustion, and degradation, represents the foundation upon which medieval civilization rests. The comfortable lives of the nobility, the grand feasts that celebrate their achievements, the elaborate ceremonies that mark their passage through life. All of it depends entirely on the willingness of people like you to endure conditions that that reduce human beings to the level of beasts of burden. The kitchen servants who die from exhaustion, burns, or accidents are replaced without ceremony or recognition. Their deaths are noted only in the account books that track the cost of training new servants to replace those who have been consumed by the machinery of noble comfort. You are not a person in this world. You are a tool that happens to be made of flesh and bone, valued only for your capacity to perform the tasks that maintain the illusion of civilized life for your social superiors. As dawn approaches, and the bells begin their relentless call to another day of suffering, you realize that the medieval world's greatest achievement isn't its cathedrals or its literature or its military conquests. It's the system of human degradation that allows a small number of people to live in luxury while the majority endure conditions that would be considered torture if applied to enemies in time of war. The kitchen where you work isn't just a place of food preparation. It's a monument to humanity's capacity for casual cruelty, a testament to the ease with which people can be reduced to instruments of others' comfort. The cycle begins again, as it always has and always will, until the last servant dies at their post and the last fire burns out in the great hearths that consume human lives as efficiently as they consume wood and coal. In medieval Europe, this is not tragedy. This is simply the natural order of things, as unquestionable as the rising of the sun or the changing of the seasons. And so you have walked through the daily existence of medieval servants, the scullery maid scrubbing until her hands bleed, the chambermaid moving like a ghost through luxurious chambers while sleeping with rats, the stable groom dancing with death among 1,000-pound war horses, and the kitchen servant slowly burning away in the fires that fed the comfortable lives of others. Each story represents thousands of real human beings who lived and died in these conditions, their individual sufferings lost to history, except for the occasional record in account books that noted the cost of replacing them. These were not the dramatic tales of knights and ladies that fill our romantic visions of medieval life. These were the grinding, repetitive, soul-crushing realities that supported the entire structure of medieval society. Every grand feast required servants to work themselves to death in kitchen fires. Every comfortable chamber required chambermaids to empty chamber pots and endure casual cruelty. Every noble's proud destrier required grooms to risk their lives daily for the privilege of surviving another day. The medieval world created a system so efficient at extracting human suffering, to support luxury that it became invisible to those who benefited from it. The servants weren't people. They were tools that happened to be made of flesh and bone, replaceable parts in a machine designed to concentrate wealth and comfort in the hands of a tiny minority, while reducing the majority to conditions that challenged the very definition of human dignity. Perhaps most disturbing of all, this system was not considered unjust or cruel by those who lived within it. It was simply the natural order of things, as unquestionable as the movement of the stars or the changing of the seasons. The suffering of servants was not a tragic accident or an unfortunate side effect. It was the necessary foundation upon which medieval civilization was built, as essential to the functioning of the system as the stones in the castle walls or the wood in the fires. The boring details of medieval servant life, the endless scrubbing, the constant hunger, the casual violence, the complete absence of hope, these mundane realities shaped the daily existence of millions of people whose names we will never know. Their stories were not recorded in chronicles or celebrated in songs because their value lay not in their individuality, but in their capacity to perform the tasks that made comfortable life possible for others. In the end, the medieval world's greatest achievement was not its architecture or its art or its military conquests. It was the perfection of human degradation as a social institution. The creation of a system so effective at reducing people to their most basic survival instincts that it could operate for centuries without serious challenge. The servants who died at their posts were not heroes or martyrs. They were simply the necessary fuel that powered a civilization built on the principle that some human beings exist solely to serve the comfort of others. And in the darkness of medieval nights, when the last fires were banked and the last chambers cleaned, the cycle prepared to begin again, as it always had and always would, until the very stones of the castles crumbled to dust and the memory of those who suffered within them faded completely from human memory.